Hi, good afternoon. Welcome to the Marketplace. Coming up, after nearly 2 decades of false starts, Ghana's long-dormant Black Volta and Sankofa gold projects are set for revival, this time under full Ghanaian ownership following acquisition by engineers and planners. We have details coming up. Also coming up, Bank of Ghana's gold reserves hit 36 tons in August this year as price of the commodity continues to reach record levels. Plus, IMF team expected in Ghana later this month for last but one review ahead of program completion in May next year. My name is Darryl Kwao. Details coming up. Thanks for staying with us, everyone. First up, an International Monetary Fund team is expected in Ghana later this month for the last but one review of the country's program, which is scheduled to conclude in May next year. That's according to information obtained by Joy Business from sources familiar with Ghana's ongoing engagement with the fund. George Rafe has more in this report.
Would not be the last review before the program ends, as there will be another one in April 2026. That will be the final review for Ghana before the program ends with the IMF in May 2026. A review that will take place later this month has been described by some as very important, as the IMF is now worried about whether Ghana will stick to the fiscal discipline post-program completion. The review will primarily focus on the economic data ending June 2025. We understand that some of the issues that will come up strongly during the review is Ghana's inflation performance, the sustainability of Bank of Ghana's reserves build-up, a report on the audit of arrears, and weak private sector banks that needs to be recapitalized, as well as state banks. The rest will be how government is working to deal with the revenue shortfalls in the face of the cedi's appreciation against the US dollar, social spending shortfalls, as well as arrears build-up in other sectors. If Ghana passes this review, some $360 million should be disbursed to hit Bank of Ghana's account in October this year. Since Ghana signed up to the IMF program, it has so far received some $2.3 billion out of the $3 billion promised under this fund program.
All right, we've got eyes on that story for you. Turning to another one we are following closely. After nearly 2 decades of false starts, Ghana's long-dormant Black Volta and Sankofa gold projects are set for revival, this time under full Ghanaian ownership following a landmark acquisition by engineers and planners, EMP, one of West Africa's leading indigenous mining firms. George Rafe joins me in studio with more on this latest development. Good afternoon to you, George. Thank you so much for joining us with this. Let's start with the background, because there's been back and forth over this gold mine.
I mean, there when first the statement came from EMP, we're saying that, okay, hold on, let's wait for what Azumah is also going to say. So everybody was a little bit apprehensive because of what has happened. But just a quick background there, because in somewhere in July 2025, engineers and planners actually announced that they've actually secured a financing deal from ECOWAS Bank to fully take over the Azumah gold resources. Then we had some shareholders from Azumah also coming out to say that, no, it's not true. It still works, it has not been finalized, so hold on. But it appears that based on the statement issued by engineers and planners today, and also another statement issued by Azumah Resources, it appears that this deal, Daryl, has been sealed.
All right. So we are talking about the Black Volta and Sankofa project.
And that's to give more specifics to our viewers in terms of what is in question, Daryl.
Okay. And so EMP today saying we've completed the process, we've acquired Black Volta and Sankofa projects. What more does the statement say?
So basically, if you go to the statement, it says that it's more of a share ownership swap. So before they have to actually do the necessary payment, that deal has to be reached first. And as we speak right now, they have reached that deal to do that share swap between terms of the ownership of Azumah resources. So Dal, if you go through that as well, it will give you more details on that particular deal in terms of what it entails. Dal. It's giving more details in terms of...
Yeah, we'll pull up that slide in a bit, which will tell us more about the deal, right?
So EMP in the statement today said that they've reached an acquisition to acquire all Azumah Resources shares and also in terms of the allocation of the transfer deal. So it means that as we speak right now, they have a total ownership of Azumah Resources. They operate that Black Volta mine thing.
Okay.
So they are saying that they also require the necessary funding. And that's where you talk about that $100 million deal from the ECOWAS Bank to actually kickstart the project. So it's not that they are now going out there to look for funding. The funding is in place, and they're going to start work as soon as possible.
And EMP is promising job creation for communities.
That has been
in
one of the major concerns for those in the area. Jobs in the Upper West region. And they're giving that commitment that, listen, we are focused on job creation. We're going to make sure those people there are going to benefit. And also want to talk about social investment. So it's not just about jobs for the immediate community, but also to develop the entire area. So that is a commitment they've actually sent out that they are going to do now that they've taken over these mines.
I mean, we started with, being very cautious, waiting to hear what Azumah had to say about this, and they also issued a statement.
Of course, they've also given that assurance that that deal indeed has been secured, and they are working to complete the entire process. So as far as they are concerned, this deal has indeed been sealed. There are no problems right now, so engineers and planners can go ahead and take over these mines.
Anything more we're hearing from your sources about the way forward? I know you've been engaging people.
I think that for when you look at the regulators' angle, they also have no objection. They've given that approval. But there are some industry players who are worried about, what does this mean for the entire mining industry? But don't forget that government has a policy where they're trying to push this local ownership thing. So there are some foreign investors who also thought that could they also been given opportunity as well, and that has been the concern there. But if you engage some of the industry players, well, if that is the plan of government, then maybe let's go ahead with that one.
All right. Thank you so much for the update, George. More on this, we're joined by Executive Director of the Center for Environmental Management and Sustainable Energy, Benjamin Insia. He joins us on Zoom. Good afternoon to you. So how significant is this move for local ownership in Ghana's mining sector, and can it realistically shift the dominance away from foreign multinationals?
Thank you very much, and good afternoon. I think the conclusion by the media needs to stop. The total claim that there has been certain transfers without the approval from the Ministry of Lands and Natural Resources, I think, is legally void until the minister comes to say that, yes, we have accepted this particular acquisition. I think it's too early to jump into conclusion that there has been an acquisition, because if you look at the Minerals and Mining Act, Section 14 of it, it says that any acquisition or transfer of ownership or mineral rights within the space must be approved by the Ministry of Lands and Natural Resources, or the minister responsible for that particular area. And we are yet to hear from them. So we need to be careful how we jump into conclusion that the deal has gone through. The deal must go through certain regulatory requirements, and the minister is the Minister of Lands and Natural Resources, the final sayer of this whole hula baloo or whole cacophony around this particular deal. Now, with respect to your question, I think that it is incumbent on us to also, as a matter of national policy, reorient and involve local participation within the space. And I think that I must commend persons who initiate some of these arrangements to ensure that most of the mining firms are done by locals or local ownership of that particular sector. For example, gold has seen a lot of surges, almost about 50% surge between last 2 years and this year. Imagine most of these mining rights are owned by, or mining companies are owned by Ghanaians. It means that our economy domestically is going to improve because there will be some level of capital injection within certain spaces, and also level of liquidity as absorption instead of maybe getting foreign companies come to take everything, and then we are left with our 10%, or even if you look at the mining act carefully, it's within 3 to 6% of government ownership. I think that we must ensure that Ghanaian businesses, Ghana as a state, and other investors with dominant Ghanaian liquidity participate in this particular sector to ensure that we get a whole lot of revenue from that sector.
Yeah, just by way of update, I'm just being told from the back room that there's indeed been approval by the Lands and Natural Resources Ministry following your concerns about whether or not they have come out to publicly say, the acquisition has pulled through. Let's take a look at the financial and technical challenges that may be ahead as EMP seeks to revive the stalled project.
Yes, I think that resources are key, both technical and then liquid resource, which is financial resources in the same. And that is why I was expecting the ministers who have communicated what you just told me earlier, because the law says that if there's going to be any acquisition or transfer, I think communication must be done 30 days after these companies have submitted their bid to the ministry, and not just to be told the same day that these companies have come out to tell us that there has been an acquisition. The minister also comes and say, yes, we have endorsed it. I think the next part also must do with a transparent nature of the regulatory process by indicating the ability and the capacities of the new assignee or the new company, that is EMP, to be able to take over this particular company and manage it well. And when you are going to do that particular assessment, it must also be done in relation to the communities that it is going to work within. Because before the mineral rights was given to Azumah, certain stakeholder engagements were done at the community level to ensure that they will respond and oblige to most of the community responsibility or engagement they are expected to do. So if EMP is also going to take over, I think that those assessments ought to have been communicated to Ghanaians to ensure that there's transparency in that communication with respect to the ability of EMP to be able to mine this firmware. Now, note also that this mine was given, or the right was given to Azumah over 30 years. So I have always been even arguing that why are we talking of acquisition when Azumah has even expired its lease? Because since 1992 to 2025, I think that Azumah should have even reapplied, or maybe as a state we cancel this particular deal and give it to a new concessionaire who will be able to take over. But we are talking of acquisition now. But the pretty important issue is that does EMP have the resources, both technical and then financial, to be able to engage in this particular activity? If they do, I think the Ministry of Lands and Natural Resources must communicate to Ghanaians, because in other jurisdictions, some of these appraisals will be done and communication will be made that yes, looking at their documents, they are ready, and we give them these specific years to be able to engage. If they are not able, we take it from them, or even get other assignees to take over as transfer ownership.
Yeah, and given the history of this project, transparency is very important, right? So what other safeguards must be in place to ensure there is transparency and also so that the community benefits?
Yes, I think in any of the dealings we do, we must respect the minerals and mining law in terms of how we are going to create employment for most of the youth within these areas. I think I've heard one of your colleagues mention that EMP has promised to create jobs. I think that their standard of operations or standard SOP must be submitted to the Minister of Lands and Mining or the Mineral Commission, and these must be communicated to Ghanaians, especially the CSOs, so that we can all help police the activities in that space. I think that will ensure accountability and transparency. And transparency and accountability can only be ensured when we have full detail or full disclosure of some of these agreements.
All right, thank you so much, Benjamin Insia, Executive Director of SEMC, speaking with us there on EMP's acquisition of Azumah Resources, Black Volta and Sankofa gold projects. Well, speak about gold. The Bank of Ghana's gold reserves have risen to 36.02 tons as of the end of August this year. That's according to a document released by the central bank. Here's more in this report.
Data showed that since the beginning of this year, the Bank of Ghana, through its gold purchase program, has increased its gold reserves by a little over 6 tons. The program has played an important role in Ghana's international reserves, as well as the recent record appreciation of the Ghana cedi against the US dollar in the second quarter of this year. But with rising prices of gold and some market analysts projecting that it would hit $5,000 per ounce, that could come as good news for Ghana's economy. This is because recent World Bank data has shown that Ghana's economic turnaround has been fueled by rising prices of commodities like gold. The Bank of Ghana Governor Dr. Johnson Isiama recently announced that they are looking at hedging a fraction of Ghana's gold reserves in terms of the prices that they are getting for the precious commodity.
And you're watching The Marketplace. We are taking a short break. When we come back, we have your financial markets update. It is a brand new week. Let's take a look at the financial markets. Government recorded an almost 16% oversubscription in its latest Treasury bills auction, breaking a 4-week streak of missed targets as rising yields on short-term instruments drew stronger investor interest. Mark Jordan Sika Natel of Senior Research Analyst at Loris Africa Securities joins me on Zoom to discuss this. Good afternoon to you, Mark Jordan. So what factors do you think drove the sudden rebound in investor appetite for short-term government securities after weeks of underperformance?
Good afternoon, Darryl, and thanks to your viewers. And so, like you mentioned, after 4 weeks of undersubscription, and the government was able to overperform in last Treasury bill auction. I mean, the drivers are multiple, but really the primary ones are the fact that last week we saw improved liquidity levels in the market from the cocoa board bills, which was settled by the government. And so we saw about 7.29 billion in cocoa bills settlements last week, and both in coupon payments and maturities for 2025. I think that was really what drove investor appetite in the Treasury bill market because of improved liquidity. And because really when you check the yields, which went up last week, they still remain below the levels of other attractive securities like the OMO bills and then, FDs. And so largely it was influenced by improved liquidity in the markets last week.
Yeah, and so is this going to be sustained, do you think? How long before we see it go back to where it was?
Okay, in terms of the sustainability, I think the play will largely be around liquidity dynamics and also yields in the market. I'll take us to data. The last time we saw such oversubscription was about some 7 weeks ago. And when you check market dynamics around that time, it was because OMO bill yields had fallen considerably, and then investors were looking at other juicy alternatives, and in that light, the T-bills came in mind. And so really, if, to the extent to which government is willing to compromise on yields and increase risk premium for investors, we could likely see this improvement in government auction.
We have just about 30 seconds. Just talk to us about the stock market and what you're watching this week. We know share price of GCB and Standard Chartered Bank are set to rise. What else can you tell us?
I think you've rightly mentioned some of the top spots in the market for this week. However, we've seen bids build up around CPC, and also MTN remains net offered on the market, which means that we could see some dip in the price. I mean, for MTN, the fundamentals are still strong, but given the rally we saw recently, I think it's been a good time for some investors to book in profit. So it remains net offered, and we could see some dip in the price this week. I think largely that will be it on the stock market.
Mark Jordan Sikanate, a senior research analyst at Loris Africa, thank you so much for joining us with that update. We appreciate it. And that's our program, everyone. Thanks for watching. More news on our website, myjoyonline.com/business. We will be back same time tomorrow.